Good morning, guys, and welcome back to Fireside Farms. So as many of you know, if you've stuck around for a while, I had all of my tomato plants last year die of a particular disease and got very little in the way of tomatoes for all of 2022. This year, I have the same disease afflicting a few of the tomatoes in my garden, though not all this time, and I wanted to show you what it's about. So the problem that's afflicting my tomatoes is actually a virus called Curly Top Virus. Beet Curly Top Virus, tomato Curly Top Virus. It is all the same virus that afflicts different plants, but tomatoes show it in very specific ways. It's a virus that's transmitted by the beet leaf hopper, which I will insert a picture of this little bug. And basically this bug obtains the virus through some sort of other weed like Russian thistle or London rockets, and it will carry this virus in their body throughout their entire lifespan, which makes it really difficult to control because they can just live their entire life transmitting the virus to every single plant that they infect. The good news is it's not transmitted plant to plant. So if you have one plant that has it, it's not going to transmit that virus to another plant. You have to have the leaf hopper eat a plant to obtain the virus. So I have several tomatoes infected, but this one in particular shows it pretty well. And I'm gonna go over the basic symptoms of curly top tomato virus. The first one being obviously curly tops. So if you see these tomato leaves, see how this one is curled under like this? They're a little wonky. They don't look flat, laid out, and green like this tomato leaf right here. So I just took this leaf off, and you can see right here the curling that is characteristic of curly top virus. As the disease progresses, you'll also see yellowing of the leaves and veining, purple veining on the underside of the leaves. Now, all of these symptoms together are indicative of curly top virus. If I just had purple veining of the leaves, that would suggest some sort of nutrient deficiency. But there are other things wrong with these plants that ensure me that it is tomato curly top virus. For example, in this tomato bed right here, you can see the general growth progression of several of these tomato plants. They're quite large, high, healthy, green, flat-leafed. And then you have this little guy and this little guy. And both of them are much smaller than their counterparts who are still growing. Now what this virus will do is it will basically just stunt the growth of your entire plant. The plant will be unable to set any more fruits, and if it's pretty young, it will just die. Although plants that are older and more established can continue living on, they just won't thrive. They're not going to produce any good fruit. It's not going to be worth keeping them around. So this plant right here is so much smaller than the rest, and it also has curling leaves, purple veins underneath, and just in general is looking a little bit more yellow than my other healthy tomato plants. So here you have a healthy tomato plant, full leaves, and then this little guy, and you can even see the odd curling that's taking place on the top of this tomato. Now for those plants infected by the curly top virus, if they have already set fruit, that fruit will continue to ripen, and it's completely okay to eat. It's not like a deadly human transferable disease. It just, the tomato plant itself is going to be no good. It's going to take up space that will never produce you any fruit in your garden. And particularly in this bed, I had 9 tomato plants. I have already taken one of them out that was showing symptoms, and then I have these 2 right here that are stunted as well. I do not have curly tops yet on this little guy, but he's been stunted and unhealthy, so I will probably let him go a little bit longer before I take him out. This guy absolutely has several symptoms of curly top virus and needs to come out. And then one more right here. See how these leaves are curled, the purple veining, the odd twisting of the tops here, and then generally looks unhealthy. So 5 out of 9 tomatoes in this bed are basically dead. They're useless. They haven't produced any fruit, so I have no reason to keep them around so that they mature that fruit. What I can do is take them out and retransplant with healthy tomato starts. Now, like I said before, the virus is transmitted by the beet leafhopper. So I can leave these plants in if I wanted to, and it will not transmit the virus to the other plants. I am perfectly safe in that regard. But I have extra space now, so I might as well replant with healthy plants. In the rest of my garden, I've already taken out 2 plants that showed signs, and I have a 3rd to take out. So that brings my total to 8 tomato plants out of roughly 20 that have been affected by this virus, which is unfortunate. But I planted way more tomatoes this year than I did last year, and I am just incredibly thankful that not all of them are infected, and I will get some sort of a tomato crop. Now, as for the vector, the beet leafhopper, unfortunately there's not much in the way of controlling this virus or the leafhopper. The leafhopper bug itself obtains the virus through eating on an infected plant within 1 minute of eating that plant, and then it will carry the virus through the rest of its life. All it takes for the leafhopper to transmit this virus to your tomato plant is a single bite. Now, fortunately, the tomato plant is not the leafhopper's preferred food, but it will pass through your garden and take a bite because it wants to see if it's yummy, and that single bite is all it takes to transmit the virus to your plant, thus ruining that entire plant for the year. And I am an organic gardener. Of course, if you don't garden organically, that's fine as well. But there's very little in the way of pesticides that will mitigate this problem because of the fact the bug usually has to eat the pesticide to die. And if it takes a bite of the plant and has the virus in it, the bug may die, but it's already transmitted the virus to your plant. So there's not a whole lot that you can do to control this besides maybe at the beginning of the gardening season, just covering all of your plants with some sort of bug fabric or frost fabric, at least until that initial wave of pests passes through. What I found last year is that I had an initial wave. I didn't actually see the leafhopper on any of my plants, but all of the plants started showing symptoms at about the same time, and then I would replant with other tomatoes and they didn't get infected. So probably these leafhoppers came through on a migration, munched on my plants, and then bounced, and I didn't have any other problems for the rest of the year. And honestly, in the future, I might end up having to cover my tomato plants if this becomes a continual problem. I would say 2 years in a row, 8 plants having to come out, that's a significant problem. Because I can't just keep devoting more and more bed space to tomatoes to mitigate a halfway tomato loss, you know. I'm not gonna plant 40 tomato plants so that I'm prepared to lose 20. And unfortunately, there's nothing I can do to recover these plants that have been stunted. If the tomato plant gets infected after it's very large, very established, it may be able to fight off the virus for a little while and keep producing, but ultimately the plant will succumb to the virus, just deteriorate in health. And unless you want a deadish looking plant sticking around in your garden, there's really no reason to keep it when you could use that space for something else. So what I'm gonna do today is take out at least 1, 2, 3, 4 tomato plants that I know for sure have curly top, and I'm going to replace them with starts from the store. Unfortunately, I have no more tomato starts that are healthy that I want to transplant back in here, so I'm going to splurge, spend the money, and go buy a couple tomato starts from the store and replant that area with healthy tomatoes. Like I said, this virus is not transmittable in the soil. It's not transmittable by touch. It must be transmitted by this bug. It should be important to note that physiological leaf curl, which is just the upward curling of leaves, can also occur just naturally for many reasons. It's not a something to be worried about, especially here in the high desert. Heat, large amounts of sun and wind can cause tomato leaves to curl upward as they are trying to protect themselves from extensive water loss. But when you factor in all of these other things like an extremely stunted plant, the leaf curl, the curling of a lot of these stems, twisting one way or another, and then the purpling of the leaves. Also yellowing of the leaves, purpling veins, both of those are signs and symptoms. So you put all of those together and you can determine that you have curly top virus. If you just had normal healthy looking plants with some leaf curl during a midday, late afternoon, that could just be a sign of heat stress, which is nothing to be worried about. It's a physiological response of the plant to its environment, and it's perfectly healthy. But this little guy, compared to the same plants that were planted at the same time, is not healthy. And it should be noted that this is an estiva variety of tomato, and this is the same exact variety. Both started their seeds at the same time, both transplanted at the same time, and they are the same variety of heat-tolerant tomato plant. So this guy has definitely got curly top virus. As disappointed as I am to have this in my garden again this year, I am extremely fortunate that it did not affect all of my plants. I caught it early enough. I recognized the symptoms. Last year was the first year that I had it, so I was meticulously checking my plants just because I was scared that I was gonna lose all of them again. And I caught it early, so now early enough in the season I can take these plants out, replace them with healthy plants from the store, and just keep on growing lots of tomatoes. Curly top virus is very common throughout the United States. It's common here in the Southwest, it's common where it rains a lot. It's just an easily transmittable virus by a very common bug. So as much as it stinks, I'm glad I was able to have some examples for you guys today. And perhaps if you're having the same problem in your garden and you didn't know what was wrong, this can help you out. So thank you for joining me. I'm gonna take care of these tomatoes and I will catch you guys on the next one.